180. That's the number of people who woke up in a hospital on Sunday morning, March 22nd, 2026. Not soldiers, not combatants, neighbors. A 10-year-old boy with shrapnel in his chest. A woman in her 30s with glass in her face. A contractor from India who came to build something and ended up inside a war he had no part in starting. Somber. The night before, Iran launched ballistic missiles at Dimona, a desert city of 40,000 people in the Israeli Negev. Dimona is also where Israel keeps its most closely guarded secret, the Shimon Peres Negev Nuclear Research Center, a facility officially described as a research site, a facility that virtually every intelligence agency in the world believes produces nuclear weapons. I've studied conflicts long enough to recognize when a line gets crossed. Not a political line, a physical one. The kind that reshapes what a war can become. Serious, Saturday night was that moment. And most of the coverage you've seen this week has missed what it actually means. What I'm going to walk you through isn't the footage you've already seen. The rubble, the sirens, the press conferences. Thoughtful, what I want to show you is the architecture underneath this. The decisions, the miscalculations, and the quiet catastrophe unfolding for ordinary people on both sides of this war who had no seat at the table when it was started. Here is the thesis of this video. Serious. The strike on Dimona wasn't just a military escalation. It was the bill arriving late for decisions made by leaders who will never pay it themselves. Layer 1. What actually happened? On the morning of March 21st, Iran's main uranium enrichment facility at Natanz, 220 kilometers southeast of Tehran, was struck. Israel denied responsibility. The Pentagon declined to comment. But Iranian state media attributed it to U.S.-supplied bunker-buster bombs, and by nightfall, Tehran had responded. Tense, 2 ballistic missiles reached Dimona and the nearby town of Arad. Israel's air defense systems engaged both. They failed, according to Israel's own firefighters. And this is the detail that should make you pause. The interception failure allowed direct hits by missiles carrying warheads weighing hundreds of kilograms. Not cluster munitions. Conventional high-explosive warheads aimed at civilian neighborhoods. Somber. And here is where the mainstream narrative stops. It tallies the wounded, quotes the prime minister, and moves on. But it doesn't ask what it means that Israel's most protected geographic zone, the area around its nuclear facility, was successfully penetrated for the first time in this war. Layer 2. The nuclear dimension. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed no damage to the research center and no abnormal radiation. That is the good news. The IAEA's Director General Rafael Grossi then made a statement that received almost no attention. He urged maximum military restraint specifically around nuclear sites. Read that again. The head of the world's nuclear watchdog felt it necessary, publicly, to tell 2 nuclear-armed actors to stop targeting each other's atomic infrastructure. Think of it like living above a gas station and 2 neighbors decide to settle a dispute with flamethrowers. The gas hasn't ignited yet. That doesn't mean the neighborhood is safe. Layer 3. What it costs the people no one is interviewing. The Al Jazeera live tracker, the source provided for this video, documents 1,937 dead in Iran as of March 30th, 2026. Among them, 212 children, 240 women, ages ranging from 8 months to 88 years old. Over 24,800 injured. On the Israeli side, the missile attacks have wounded more than 6,000 people since February 28th. In Lebanon, a separate front has claimed 1,238 lives, including at least 124 children. These are not abstractions. They are people who had nothing to do with the decision to launch the war on February 28th. Not on either side. And here is what almost no one is saying. The decision to begin this war was made at the top. The invoice is being paid at the bottom. That is the story of every war ever fought. But this one carries a specific danger that most don't. Layer 4. The missile math. Defense analysts have described Iran's missile program as the largest and most varied in the Middle East. Its short-range ballistic systems, including the Fateh variants and the Zulfiqar, were designed exactly for this. Rapid regional strikes that compress warning times. Israel's military acknowledged intercepting 92% of incoming Iranian projectiles across the war so far. That sounds impressive, until you calculate what 8% reaches. And the math is shifting. In the early days of this conflict, Iran was firing in the triple digits per day. By late March, some days saw single-digit launches. But a single ballistic missile with hundreds of kilograms of explosives, as one Israeli military official said, can have a tragic result. Dimona proved it. Layer 5, the regional spill. This war has not stayed between Iran and Israel. Iranian strikes have reached Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. A drone struck a British military base in Cyprus. Qatar Energy halted LNG production. Oil prices surged after Israel hit Iran's South Pars gas field. The UAE closed its stock exchanges. 13 American soldiers are confirmed dead. And on March 30th, a Kuwaiti oil tanker was hit in Dubai port. This is no longer a bilateral conflict. It is a regional fire that began in one room and is finding open windows. Layer 6, the psychological layer, the one that hits the skeptic harder than any headline. The residents of Dimona thought they were safe precisely because of the nuclear site. One woman told reporters she had lived there for years under the assumption that the facility's presence guaranteed protection. That assumption, that strategic importance equals civilian safety, died Saturday night. And it died for communities on both sides. In Iran, civilians in Tehran, Isfahan, and cities across the country have been living under U.S. and Israeli airstrikes since February 28th. The assumption that political conflicts happen somewhere else, to someone else, is gone. Every actor in this conflict faces a version of the same trap. For Israel, respond forcefully and risk escalation toward Iran's remaining nuclear infrastructure, with consequences the IAEA is already flagging. Pull back and absorb political damage domestically while Iran reestablishes deterrence. For Iran, continue tit-for-tat strikes on Israeli civilian areas and face deeper international isolation and potentially expanded U.S. military action. Negotiate and be seen as capitulating under military pressure. For the U.S., press harder and risk drawing more American soldiers into a war that is already costing lives across 9 countries. Step back and watch a regional order it has maintained for decades fracture in real time. Size. None of these options is clean. All of them carry a price. Somber. None of the people paying that price voted on the decision to start the war. Scenario 1. Diplomatic containment. U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations, already underway according to multiple reports, produce a framework agreement that pauses the conflict. Hopeful, the war freezes rather than ends. Casualties stop accumulating. The underlying tensions remain unresolved but become manageable in the short term. Pause. Scenario 2. Incremental exhaustion. Both sides continue limited exchanges while economic pressure, oil disruption, closed stock markets, halted LNG, forces a de facto ceasefire through attrition. Size. The civilian toll on both sides becomes the political cost that breaks the political will to continue. Scenario 3. Nuclear facility incident. A miscalculation, a missile that lands closer to the Shimon Peres Center, or a strike on Iran's Fordow facility, triggers a radiation event. Alarmed, the IAEA's warning moves from advisory to crisis management. International pressure produces an emergency ceasefire within days. The war ends, but leaves behind a contaminated zone and a precedent that nuclear infrastructure is a legitimate target. Scenario 4. Regional expansion. The Houthi missiles that struck Israel on March 28th represent a new vector. If Lebanon's Hezbollah escalates beyond its current level, if Iraqi factions intensify strikes on U.S. bases, if Gulf states face sustained infrastructure attacks, the geography of this war expands beyond what any current diplomatic framework can contain. If you're watching this as someone who wants this to end, and I suspect many of you are, here is what clarity looks like. Somber. The people being wounded in Dimona and the children being killed in Tehran did not choose this. They share a condition that crosses every border in this conflict. They are the ones absorbing a decision made by others. Pause. The urgency is real, not the urgency of taking sides. The urgency of understanding that every day this continues, the bill gets larger, and the people paying it are not the ones who ordered it. Size. This conflict has now entered its 2nd month. Over 1,900 dead in Iran, 20 in Israel, 1,238 in Lebanon, 13 American soldiers, workers from India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Morocco, People who came to another country to build a better life, caught inside a war between governments they had no connection to. Here is what we know. Iran struck Dimona with ballistic missiles, injuring 180 people in one night. Israel's air defenses failed in the most protected zone in the country. The IAEA confirmed no nuclear damage. This time, somber, the war has now spread across 9 countries and claimed lives from Iran to the Gulf states to Lebanon to U.S. military bases across the region. What the coverage isn't saying is this. The civilians accumulating on both sides of this ledger were never consulted. A 10-year-old in Dimona, a woman in Tehran, a port worker in Kuwait, an 8-month-old child in Iran. Size, they're the payment on a debt they did not incur. The bill arrives late. It always does, and it never goes to the right address. The question I'll leave you with is this. At what point does the cost to civilians on both sides become the argument that ends this? Not a negotiated settlement between governments, but an exhaustion so visible, so documented, so impossible to ignore, that continuing becomes politically unsustainable? And who decides when that threshold is reached? Tell me in the comments. I read them all.